I was asked, what age can I start homeschooling my child? I'm Nicholeen Peck, and I homeschooled my 4 children, and I also homeschooled my foster children who had to go to school. How did that happen? We'll talk about that in a moment. What most people know me for is my parenting. I teach parenting, good communication, how to build strong family bonds all over the world through the lens of the principle self-government, but in this video, we're talking about homeschool. In this video, I'm going to share some of my personal experiences about homeschool. Then I'm going to share with you what you can do with your homeschooling by age. So at what age can you really start homeschooling? Very, very young, like when they're tiny, when they're babies. Read to them, sing to them, talk to them. That's all homeschooling. Every single thing that you do with your child while you are interacting with them and you're around them is homeschooling. All the days of a person's life, they are learning and growing and gathering information. So the schooling actually never stops. So what type of homeschooling do you do when a person is young? Well, when my children were tiny, I would talk to them about every single thing I was doing. Now I'm going to put on your sock. Now I'll put on your shoe and we'll tie the shoe. And I would say all of the words of everything that I was doing so that they could start learning the vocabulary early. You know what? All of my children were pretty early talkers, and I think that's because they didn't live in silence with me, and I didn't just try to stimulate them with devices, but instead I spoke to them and I read them stories and I interacted with them. That made a very big difference. By the time they were toddlers, we were having bath times with puffy letters, and we were tracing letters and drawing letters in cornmeal with our finger, and we were talking about the letters, and we were talking about animals and colors and all the things. So for my first 2 children, by the time they were 3 years old, they were reading. At that point, I knew that I could teach them anything. If you can teach someone to read, you truly can teach someone anything, because that's the hardest thing that you ever teach someone. And you know what? Even though they're going to school to learn about how letters say certain things, it's really that extra reading time that happens with you in the evenings that's really teaching them to read. It's the constant exposure to reading with another person and hearing and seeing the written word. So you're really already working on teaching your child to read. It may seem like it's bumpy some days, but you'll get there. And if you can do that, you can do anything. So there are different phases of education. And I learned these phases from Dr. Oliver DeMille, who wrote the book, A Thomas Jefferson Education. He also wrote The Phases of Learning and the TJ Ed Companion, as well as TJ Ed for Teens. The whole premise of his philosophy is that there's 3 different types of education. There's conveyor belt education, there's competitive conveyor belt education, and then there is leadership education. As a homeschooler, you could actually do any of those. You could say, we're going to just do all of our education online, and we're going to go through the workbooks and do the online stuff. That's conveyor belt. You could do competitive conveyor belt. So you could be part of an elite group of people that is getting together for special activities and chess clubs and stuff like that. That would be more of elite conveyor belt, especially if everyone is still doing the same things all the time. You're now just saying, we're the best. So that would be like your private school experience. And then there is the experience where you say, okay, what are the principles of education? Where's the person at? And how do I tailor fit this education to make sure they become the leader that they are supposed to be? That's the leadership education. And this education starts when a person is very small. Now, when you go through this type of education, there are the phases of learning. The different phases of learning are ages 0 to 8, which he calls core phase. Core phase is when they learn what's right and wrong, good and bad, true and false. And they learn those things through work and play. So this means that you're telling stories, you're discussing things, learning right and wrong all the time. And then they're working alongside with you, weeding the garden, folding the laundry, folding clothes, but then they're also learning their letters and how to read, and that's playtime. Then there is the ages of 8 to 12. Usually, give or take 100 years on any of these phases, because some people never go through all the phases. But in this phase, it's called the love of learning phase. This is the phase where they learn to love learning. They flit from thing to thing. They get excited about learning this for a little bit, and then they change their mind, and then they learn some of this, and then some of this. It's like the sparks flying all of the time. This love of learning can stay constant throughout a person's life if they really get nurtured in a love of learning when they're in this phase of learning. If you've already subscribed to this channel, then you know that I talk a lot about education on this channel. And there is also another type of learning called scholar phase. So when a person is in the scholar phase, this is when they're in the higher levels. Probably you only do these 3 phases of learning in your home. Scholar phase is age like 12 to 18. Again, give or take. There are some adults that never get there. So when they are in scholar phase, they are studying 6 to 12 hours a day. And they do this over a period of time until they reach about 5,000 hours. They go through 3 different levels of scholar phase when they are in the scholar phase. Practice scholar, and then self-directed scholar, and then mentored scholar. They get into it, and then they get themselves really going, and then they have somebody make it harder for them. And by that time, they're usually ready for depth phase, which is their university level. And then after depth phase comes mission phase, which when they're making an impact on their society around them. And then there is impact phase. Impact is when now you're training other people to know the things that you do so that they can go out and take over where you've left off. Impact phase is the end of the education phases and usually is hitting a person when they're in their older ages. So the first 3 levels happen in your home. This means that all the way along you can homeschool your children, but why not just start when they're 0? You don't need to wait for a certain age to start to homeschool your children. Start today. What can you do? Start by reading stories. Lots of stories, and make sure that they're classics if you can. Not just the fluffy stuff that talks about how to make a pancake, but things that get back to what's right and wrong, good and bad, true and false. Because no matter what phase of learning a person is in, they actually always end up going back to those core values when they're putting their world together. And they won't ever hit mission phase if they don't have an allegiance to what is right, good, and true. And that is instilled when they're very young. So you see, when a person goes to school, if they miss these phases of learning, they could end up just getting an education for something shallow like money or power or to look cool to other people or because they're bored and don't know what else to do. That doesn't mean everybody does that, because even in a public education, a person could choose to have a leadership education if they approach their education with that mindset. But it doesn't often happen unless a person knows that there's a difference. Every single year, a couple of times a year, I would have conversations with my children about what phase of learning they were in. They knew the phases and what to expect in those phases, and they were able to say, I think I'm in love of learning, maybe kind of even transitioning to scholar. So then we would make goals for them so that they could make that transition properly or that they could live in that phase that they felt that they were in. When you're homeschooling your children during all of the phases, it could seem a little crazy at home. In fact, some days you could feel like you're not sure if you're really making progress because you've got a baby and a toddler, and then you've got a couple in the grade school ages, and then you've got this one junior high or high school student. It could seem like, how do I do it all? Well, always put your greatest focus on the younger ages because as they get a little bit older, they get more independent in their studies. So then they'll mostly just report to you and not have to have as much one-on-one time with you during their school days. So anyway, it is possible. If you can homeschool when you got littles, you can homeschool forever. And when they are little, oh my, that's the sweetest time. Just enjoy all of those learning and the sparks that are flying all of the time. Now, if you would like to learn more about how I homeschool and things that you can use to help strengthen your homeschool, I've got a lot of free content on a homeschool website that I created during COVID called heartofhomeschool.net. So if you click there, then you'll be able to find a lot of free things. If you need a little help with your own calmness to make homeschool really last, then go to teachselfgov.com/toolkit, and you can have the Calm Parenting Toolkit from my Teaching Self-Government website for free. Click on either one of those links or both at the same time. I'll see you there.